Oh, hello and welcome as we dig back into the Bible book of Revelation, and we're in chapter 16, and today we're exploring verses 17 to 21. This is what they say. The seventh angel poured out his bowl into the air, and out of the temple came a loud voice from the throne, saying, "It is done." Then there came flashes of lightning, rumblings, peals of thunder, and a severe earthquake. No earthquake like it has ever occurred since mankind had been on the earth. So tremendous was the quake. The great city split into three parts, and the cities of the nations collapsed. God remembered Babylon the Great and gave her the cup filled with the wine of the fury of his wrath. Every island fled away, and the mountains could not be found. From the sky huge hailstones, each weighing about 100 pounds, fell on people. And they cursed God on account of the plague of hail, because the plague was so terrible. Here we have then the seventh bowl describing the final judgment and destruction of evil. Demonic, satanic, human, all of it judged and destroyed. The bowl is poured into the air, the symbolic dominion of Satan. Paul, in his letters in the New Testament, describes Satan as the prince of the power of the air, there in Ephesians chapter 2, verse 2. So this is judgment on the unbelieving realm that is ruled by the dragon and the beast, as well as the unbelieving human realm symbolized by the kings who gathered that we looked at in the last video. The final judgment of God is not initially described, it's actually just announced. It's happened, it is done. It's the same as Jesus' words on the cross. It is finished. There is no battle which culminates in victory here. The victory has happened, it is announced, and then it is described. This is utter authority of God judging righteously evil. What a wonder! The ways of God are so utterly not of this world that sometimes we can't even grasp them. The death of the God-man, Jesus Christ, that brings victory on the cross. How does victory come through such suffering? But that is the testimony of the Bible and of Revelation 2. God does not stoop to human methods, but is victorious through the service and suffering. And so even before the consequences are made clear, and even as there might be many battles to come, indeed, people at the end of our reading curse God because of the hailstone plague, yet victory is assured. Evil is defeated in all its forms. And the response to victory is described as the collapse of creation, lightning and thunder, and earthquake and hail. This is based on God's appearing at Mount Sinai in Exodus, a book of the Bible, right at the start of the Bible there, the second book of the Bible. The presence of God there causes a dramatic response from his creation. Here is the breakup of the cosmos, which continues later with islands fleeing and mountains not being found. In some senses, this is because we have no other language really to describe the wonder and the awe of the glory of God. And in another sense, what's happening here is built upon other descriptions of God's just judgment in the Old Testament, especially relating to earthquake, the earthquake that has not been known on earth since mankind was created. In Exodus, in Egypt, that description is used of the plague of hail. And in Daniel, the description is used of the suffering and the warring at the end of history, when God's people will be transformed into their resurrection lives. A time of distress such as never occurred before, Daniel says. So all these things factor into the descriptions of what's going on here in Revelation. The great city was split in three here in our reading as a consequence of the earthquake. Again, this is based on what happens in the Old Testament when God turns up to judge with justice. And the object of that judgment is Babylon the Great, which is the metaphor for all ungodly human and world systems. We're not just talking about the city of Babylon or Rome, which would have been forefront in John's original readers, or London or New York or Beijing or anywhere else. This is a universal judgment on the world's culture, political and economic centres that oppose God, in fact upon the whole world of humanity that is against God. They are made to drink the wine that leads to their own destruction. The pouring out of the wine is another metaphor for God's just and righteous judgment. And Babylon the Great is punished in the way that she has condemned others. Just as she destroyed others, so she will be destroyed. The unjust elements of our own culture and world will now, that we experience now, will be included in this. The evil manner of our financial systems that enslave. The warring anger of the West that condemns so many to suffering through the arms trade that brings the Western nations wealth. There are many more ways in which the Babylon the Great is made manifest today and judgment will come upon that. Hail comes again in our reading as part of the destruction of the wicked, which causes the wicked to being judged to curse God. And this cursing isn't suggestive of the wicked surviving God's judgment, but of the hardness of their hearts whilst judgment is ongoing. That they see the glory of God and they experience his just judgment on their evil actions, yet they refuse to repent and fall on God's mercy, remaining defiant and cursing God himself. Across chapters 17 to 19, we will see this final judgment of evil from different perspectives. As John, as usual in Revelation, tells us more of what's happening from different angles. He gives us a different angle on the same theme. But as we end this chapter in chapter 16 with God's justice done, and as you remain faithful to Jesus, all the injustices that you have faced and will face will be put to rights when God and his justice is made known. It will be put right by God when his judgment is enacted. God's justice and his judgment, whilst being hard for us to grapple with in our culture today, but sometimes in our churches, is always seen as good and needed and something to be rejoiced over in the Bible. We moderns have come to see this judgment as a bad thing, but that's only so if we are against God and our hearts are hard, if we are evil perpetrators of evil ourselves. If we worship the beast, to use John's words here in Revelation, then we are right to fear. But if we worship the Lamb, then we can rejoice. And in the meantime, there is still time to repent of worshipping the beast and turn again to worship the Lamb who was slain.